Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great. Good. Military surplus rifles are a great pastime to get into. They are, as I often said, practical history. They are among the few things that the average person can own that have some small historical significance, and they can also use them. That said, military surplus rifles have an Achilles heel. They're old and they're only getting older. Now today I'm not going to talk about which Milsurps you should buy, rather the things that I think you should be buying to keep those rifles going. Now, none of this stuff is going to blow your mind, but hopefully the list that I lay out here will spur you to spend some of those gun show dollars, not just on guns and ammo, but stuff that may be equally important. This one kind of crept up on me recently, and in retrospect, I shouldn't have been surprised. Everyone these days seems to be looking for original Bloc clips, chargers, stripper clips. Now for many rifles, you don't actually need these things, but there are those, well, like the M1 Garand and Carcanos among others, that need them to function as a repeating rifle. Now since most clips, chargers and Blocs were made many decades ago and got used up in wars or just breaking today, not surprisingly, there's a gradually dwindling supply of these things. Heck, even stripper clips for 7.62 by 39mm ammunition aren't as cheap and plentiful as they used to be. So if you come across some that aren't too insanely priced, I consider picking up several of them before you either can't find them or can't afford them, particularly if your rifle can't really function without them. Now, new production stripper clips, chargers, and Bloc clips, well, here's one for example for Mosin Nagant, can be hit or miss. Now, I've bought some that worked well enough, which is to say that they managed the minimum necessary. In other cases, you may not have a choice. For example, there aren't a lot of Berthier 3-shot Bloc clips around these days. Buying a reproduction could be your only option in some cases. Everybody loves military surplus rifles. Nowhere near as many people love the Bayonets that were issued with them. Now the horse may have left the barn already for this one, as many Bayonets have been rapidly climbing up in price in recent years. There are some that I bought relatively recently for my rifles, which are already several times the price that I paid. If you get a chance to pick up a bayonet for a military surplus rifle that you own, I'd seriously consider it. To me, I find owning the bayonet to a rifle to be almost as important as the rifle itself. I honestly believe that you can learn a lot by having the two together to learn how they worked together or didn't. It also adds to the value of your rifle if you decide to sell it down the line. This is an obvious one, but I can count on a leper's hand how many people I know that actually practice this. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, military surplus rifles tend to be old, and old things break down more readily than when they were fresh and new. I know this personally. Now, there are parts on your rifles that are more subject to breakage, whether through heavy use, metal fatigue, or just simply poor upkeep, that I think you should have spares for. Stuff like firing pins, extractors, and springs. If you're like me, you don't own rifles to exclusively admire, you shoot them. And it's hard to shoot a rifle, for example, if you don't have a firing pin. So if you come across some spare parts that are essential for your military surplus firearms functioning, what's the harm in buying them? Just make sure to label them so that you know what you have, rather than just, tossing them into a drawer and expecting to remember. Another avenue for this is if you have a machinist buddy who could clone some of these parts. Something to think about. Another obvious one, but it bears listing nonetheless. Every SVT-40 was issued with 2 magazines. I've never seen one for sale with 2 magazines. You get one, be happy you even got that. Now what happens if that SVT-40 or AG-42B, Lee Enfield or whatever doesn't have a functioning magazine? Well, you can still shoot it, but it's a single shot now. No point in a repeating rifle if it can't repeat. And that is the problem. If you only have one magazine for a rifle, that is a big potential failure point. Magazines don't last forever. You come across a spare magazine, particularly for rifles that are notoriously difficult to find them for, I'd seriously consider buying it. Even if you don't need it, I'm sure you'll be able to resell it at a future point and at least get your money back. One note of caution, however, is I would be wary with reproduction magazines. One good example is this aforementioned SVT-40. I have never seen a repro magazine for this rifle not fail due to shoddy manufacture. And depending on the rifle, you may need to work on that magazine to get it working reliably with your rifle. Many military surplus firearms came issued with tools that were designed to help maintain them. They can be as simple as the Mosin-Nagant's tool, which allows you to break down the bolt for cleaning, or as busy as the M1 Garands, with which you could do everything from remove and replace the gas cylinder lock screw, seat the rear sight base, and remove or assemble extractors and ejectors. Do you need any of this stuff? Well, often not, but something like the Mosin-Nagant's tool allows you to make sure that the firing pin is set to the correct position to ensure appropriate primer strikes if you take apart the bolt for cleaning. That is a thing. Still, a tool could allow you to do some maintenance that you wouldn't be able to with generic gear. And remember, practical history. Shooting your rifle as a soldier did back in the day is one thing. Learning how they maintained their rifle in what for them was the proper military way is another thing. It's not all about ringing steel at the range. It's about learning a little too. Like a bayonet, this is a nice value add if you ever decide to sell your rifle. Collectors like this sort of thing and will pay. And there you go. 5 things I think you should be buying when you get the chance at your next gun show or visit to a gun store. Few of these things will make or break your Milsurp collecting life, but I think they all have an important role and deserve some money to be spent on them. At any rate, I hope you found today's video to at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope all of your military surplus firearms remain in tip-top condition and give you years of pleasure. Take care and bye-bye.